And breaking news coming in, India has successfully launched the jet from Brahmos missile, with the Brahmos missile being test fired from the Sukhoi 30. Consulting editor, India Today, Shiv Arur is with us right now. What a fantastic achievement, isn't it, Shiv? The first air test of the Brahmos supersonic cruise missile.
Huge game-changing test that the entire world will be sitting up and watching today, Avantika, because the Brahmos A happens to be one of the most capable missiles, and it has been tested for the first time today after several years in development and a lot of delays. Today's test is said to have been very successful. Now, the Brahmos A is a large missile. It weighs more than 2 tons. It was slung on to a Sukhoi 30, a modified version of the Sukhoi 30. It took off from a base under the Eastern Air Command in the eastern part of the country earlier this morning, and it was launched at a ship target about 280 kilometers range out in the Bay of Bengal. The information, even though an official statement has come out from the Ministry of Defense, we are getting information directly from Brahmos sources that this was a perfectly successful strike. The missile smashed right into the target, validating this test that has been highly anticipated for a very long time. Now, this weapon is really important because this is a supersonic cruise missile, with a range of about 300 kilometers. So that makes it the longest range air-launched weapon that India has ever operated so far, non-nuclear. Now, the Brahmos missile can hit targets 290 kilometers away. This range will actually be extended in the months and years ahead, Avantika, which makes it a very formidable weapon that can be used at standoff ranges from an aircraft like the Sukhoi 30, but also from other aircraft that will enter Indian Air Force service. The other thing about the Brahmos is it's an extremely accurate missile with a very small error probability. So this is a missile that can be used for surgical hits on targets at extended ranges. The first thing that, of course, comes to mind is things like terror camps, any kinds of establishments that need to be hit across the border. So China and Pakistan will be paying very, very close attention to this particular missile strike, this missile test, because neither country has anything that comes anywhere close to what this particular capability gives India.
Oh, this is fantastic. I mean, Brahmos, they're creating history, Shiv, and everybody was so excited about this mission. How did the Air Force prepare for this maiden trial? And you mentioned China and Pakistan at a time when, both the nations are conspiring against India, building bunkers along the line of control. Other than them, every country would be setting up and taking notice on this fantastic feat achieved.
In a very big way. The Brahmos missile, Avantika, as you well know, is already in service with the Indian Army and the Indian Navy. We've got land-launched versions and we've got ship-launched versions. Now, the air-launched version, has been in development for a very long time. There have been unfortunate delays for many months and years, but today's test has been successful. So there's a lot to be happy about for the team and for the Ministry of Defense and the Indian Air Force. Having said that, the Brahmos missile is already operationally ready. It's already in service with the Indian Navy and the Indian Army. So technically speaking, this capability already exists. These missiles could theoretically already be launched against terror camps across the line of control, against establishments in China. We have the Brahmos already deployed in the northeast as well. But an air-launched version provides, a higher capability. This is a cruise missile launched from the air. The standoff ranges, could be greater. The targeting capabilities from an aircraft could be much more accurate. So this is a capability that the Indian Air Force is going to welcome with open arms. The strategic forces will be welcoming with open arms because remember that until last year, India had been restricted by what was called the MTCR, the missile range regime, which basically restricts the range of missiles that can be traded between non-member countries. After India became a signatory to this regime, the Brahmos missile can now have its range extended beyond 290 to 300 kilometers. What we're hearing is this is a missile that could ideally, in its land and sea launched versions, go up to ranges of 600 to 900 kilometers. Now imagine a missile launched from the air with ranges above 500 kilometers. That is an enormous airstrike capability that India will wield, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have some kind of a message from Pakistan or China later today, probably on the lines of India provoking, in India indulging in provocative gestures by testing such weapons in the region.
So just explain this to us, Shiv. Unlike the Army and the Navy versions, were there any changes made for this particular mission? Were there any modifications made, to fit the missile into the Sukhoi aircraft?
Very good question, Avantika. Yes, absolutely. The missile that the Navy and the Army use is actually quite significantly different. For instance, this is a pretty heavy missile, so it needed to be tightened, it needed to be lightened for the Sukhoi, but it wasn't light enough. So the Sukhoi had to be modified a little bit. It had to be, it had the wings, the pylon on the belly, the hard point on which the missile sits had to be invented afresh. It had to be, there were modifications to the aircraft, both hardware and software. There were modifications in terms of reinforcing parts of the aircraft, including its wings, to be able to carry such a heavy missile. Even though the missile was made lighter, it carried one less booster on the missile because it already had the momentum of the aircraft itself. There were special stabilizing fins that needed to be added to the missile's fuselage because it needs to remain stable during the weapons release phase, which is just after it drops from the aircraft. Avantika, the huge wind against the weapon system shouldn't topple it or send it spinning out of control. So there are stabilization surfaces that have been added to the Brahmos A, which is the air-launched version. So essentially it is the same weapon, but there have been very significant modifications to facilitate an air launch, which is a very, very different kettle of fish than a sea launch or a land launch.
Very interesting there. Defense expert PK Sehgal is also with us. And so what a feat achieved the supersonic cruise missile, which can now be launched from air, water, land. I mean, this is a game changer.
This is absolutely a game changer. It's a huge force multiplication. Something unique that has been achieved by the Indian Air Force and the DRDO in the annals of warfare. No country in the world has been able to do what we've been able to do. We now have the capability of taking out targets up to a depth of 490 kilometers inside China and inside Pakistan without having the need to cross over into their territory. Which means the aircraft would be safe, the pilot would be safe, and we can control very many types of targets. It could be nuclear installations, it could be artillery concentration, it could be missile concentration, it could be headquarters, it could be tank concentrations, it could be terrorist training camps, etc., or a terrorist launch pads, etc. So this is something which is a mega force multiplier, and the Chinese and the Pakistanis are going to be extremely worried about it, because this will only be phase Mark 1 of this missile.
Okay.
The second version is going to be, this is only 90 kilometers. Second version is going to be 400 kilometers, and 700 kilometers, and 1000 kilometers. This flies at a 3 times the speed of sound. The next one is going to be hypersonic, which will be flying 5 times the speed of sound.
Right, sir.
And the missile is virtually, when it flies over the territory, land, etc., it dips down and remains only 50 meters above the obstacle level.
All right.
Which means it's almost...
Right, sir. An absolutely outstanding and extraordinary feat achieved by the Indian Air Force. Major General PK Sehgal, thank you so much. Shiv Arur, thank you.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you would love to.